Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Friday afternoon and another Level Up. It's episode 177 today. 60 minutes, of course, of live Q&A where your questions really do drive the show. Adriana is over in the social chat today. So please do let her know your name, of course, and the city from where you're joining. We really do enjoy finding out everything about our audience around the world. So do that. She's going to post some links into the chat so that you can vote up the questions that you would most like answered. And of course, for you to be able to add your own as well. And if your question is selected, then of course, your name's going to appear in the credits at the end of the show. So get your questions in early, people, and stay with us to see all of that happening. Accountancy and engineering are probably two professions where across the world, internationally, you will be familiar with them being referred to as a chartered profession, chartered accountants, chartered engineers, and so on. It's a level of achievement which is seen as the very pinnacle of a particular profession. Now, in the UK, chartered status is even more special, and UK chartered bodies are granted the rights to award that prestigious level of achievement under a royal charter with the permission of the Privy Council, a very ancient and noble body indeed. Now, since this was granted to the UK Association for Project Management, becoming a chartered project professional has been the ambition of many and the achievement and now of a growing number of people working in the PPM space. So to help us learn all about the journey of becoming chartered and exploring what being a brilliant project manager is all about, we've got a fantastic panel joining us today. So let's jump straight in and meet them. Sian Ferguson joins us for the first time on Level Up today. She is, of course, the co-founder and director over at Novare Consulting. They're an international program and project management companies specializing in the delivery of bespoke support for large global clients. Welcome to Level Up, Sian. Lovely to see you.
Thanks, Nick. It's great to be here for my first show, but you're 177th, and on a really exciting topic about becoming a chartered project professional, which is something I think in the project management profession we're all really pleased to see because it means our profession is coming of age. So lovely to be with you all. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you so much indeed. It's such a good point, isn't it? That maturity in the profession, all of those years of building that competency and capability is starting to bear fruit. I totally agree with you. Ricardo Santos is a familiar face, of course, on Level Up. He's a senior program manager over at Irish Rail, who delivers large multidisciplinary infrastructure projects at pace and scale. Ricardo's mantra is to be on time, be on track, and to be on target, something which I personally try to take to heart, but I often, I'm afraid, don't quite get there, Ricardo. I need some coaching from you, my friend. Something that he has taken into his successful journey to become a chartered project professional with the APM. Welcome back to Level Up, Ricardo. Great to see you.
Thank you, Nick. Glad to be back. And thank you again for the opportunity of explaining to our viewers and listeners how important being a chartered project professional is, now brought to the same level of a chartered engineer, accountant, quantity surveyor, as you mentioned. So I'll be glad to share my experience and the importance of this status. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And one of two panelists who are the living embodiment of what you can achieve in your professional career. So brilliant. Thank you, Ricardo. Etienne Shardlow rejoins us. He's coming to us from the other hemisphere, from South Africa. He is, of course, head of education with Pink Elephant in that country. A regular panelist on the show, Etienne focuses on helping his clients align their business strategies with enabling technologies and governance, delivering outstanding outcomes from the projects and programs, that they are running. Welcome back to Level Up, Etienne. Great to see you again.
Yeah, good to be back, Nick. It's nice to be here, coming from Cape Town today. And so, yeah, good to be here and looking forward to sharing a little on the educational aspects of becoming a chartered project professional.
Excellent. Thank you so much indeed. Tom O'Shea completes our panel today. He's an independent consultant over at Iverk PM Limited. And like Ricardo, he also holds the Chartered Project Professional status. His projects and programs cover a wide range of challenges, including things like cultural change, people improvement, business development, business process development rather, marketing and web-based services and so on across different industries. So welcome to Level Up, Tom. Great to have you here today.
Thanks very much, Nick. It's a great honour and pleasure to be here. It's really good opportunity to be able to talk more widely about ChPP, because since it's been launched, it's been something that has been a great interest across the profession and has, I think, gone from strength to strength. So I'm looking forward to giving some insights and my understandings of it to help others to gain the accreditation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tom. Now, completing our on-screen team today is, of course, our question master, Charlotte Miller. She's joining us from the sunny Thames Valley in the UK. It's been a rare occurrence for the sun to be shining here during an English summer. You often don't see the sunshine, but we are today. Welcome back, Charlotte. How's your week been?
It's good. I was actually in Yorkshire in the beginning of the week, but here I am back in the Thames Valley for the end of the week. And it looks like I brought the sunshine with me, which is really good news for the UK.
Well, please leave a little over the weekend. I would like to be able to at least go out without my big coat. There's a northern expression for you, if you're familiar with that in the UK. I can see a huge number of people online already. So thank you so much for joining. If you've done so today on LinkedIn and also on YouTube, we're going to come to our social team in a few moments. You are, of course, the producers of the show. But let's get going, if we can, Charlotte, and put our first question to the panel.
Certainly can, Nick. Our first question is from George D. George asks, how well is the ChPP status recognised outside of the United Kingdom?
That's a really good question, George, and one which I would have said a few years ago actually was very little. But the reality is that it's building all of the time. Sian, why don't you start us off with this one, and then we'll hear from Ricardo.
Yeah, I completely agree, Nick. I think it's a relatively new status, and Charter is unique to the UK, but it does come with that approval from the Privy Council, and Her Late Majesty the Queen was actually signed the Project Professional Charter into being. So I think it's gaining a great deal of recognition as it matures, and I think it shows really the extent to which, as we said already, the profession's maturing. And I'm sure that people in many other countries understand what Charter means from their experience of accounting, surveying, etc., etc. So, yeah, great question, and I think that recognition is definitely growing.
Most definitely is. Thank you so much indeed, Sian. Completely agree with you. Ricardo, what are your thoughts on this?
Exactly the same that Sian expressed. It's a recognition that is not challenged, differently from other status and other certifications. I can tell you for experience outside even of Europe, in other English-speaking countries, Canada, for instance, where I've worked, the status is very well recognized, and it creates a differentiation above other certifications for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was reading some with interest, actually, some of the job postings on different websites from different countries. And we're starting to see more and more talking about chartered status. And that's really interesting to see, mostly in leadership roles, I think it's fair to say. But then again, you would expect that to, be the case as well. Is that something that you've experienced, Ricardo, as well, that you're starting to see, that recognition, not just from the people inside the industry, but the people looking to hire people in the industry?
It is, and funny enough, when we refer to projects where that are delivered with taxpayer money, so public investment, that is very much a reality, particularly large scale infrastructure projects where I've been involved for many years. That is becoming a reality, fortunately.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much indeed. Thank you, Ricardo. Etienne, your thoughts. Now, you're based in South Africa, but I know that you're to and from the UK. So, from your point of view, are you starting to see this gain some traction in your country?
Yeah, so it started very slowly in South Africa, but a lot of South African professionals work globally. There's a lot of South Africans kind of traveling the globe, working in other countries. And slowly, because a lot of our project managers are working on international projects, they are working in other countries, a lot of the demand for this chartered status is starting to filter back to South Africa, and there is interest in it now. So off to a slow start, but it's picking up.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that in the early days. People were intrigued, but very quickly it started to gain momentum. And I think, to Ricardo's point, it's the equivalence. It's that unequivocal statement that, you are at the top of your, profession when you have that chartered status. So it's a really good differentiator. Tom, your thoughts on this one about, that recognition, if you like, around the world of the chartered status? Is it something that's starting to be asked for rather than, just simply a badge of honor?
I was actually going to add a little footnote to what's been said, but look at it from the other way around, which is that one of the routes into chartered status, which is something I'm sure is going to come up as a topic later on, recognises other assessments and qualifications. And one of those that's recognised is from the Australian Institute for Project Management. So they've applied to have their accreditation recognised as a ChPP, and in return, they're recognising ChPP over there as something that is worth having. So I think definitely it is something that is getting increased traction internationally.
Yeah, I agree with that. The Australian Association for Project Managers, has always been closely, there's a community of project management, national project management associations, membership bodies and so on around the world, isn't there? And the Australian APM, is closely associated, as indeed are other Commonwealth countries, including Canada, which was, Ricardo was talking about, a little earlier and so on. So, the challenge for us always, I think, is to continue to build that, and to refer to it. So one thing that I would ask, if we can go back to panel, please, one thing that I would ask of everybody is, without bragging about it, just talk about it a bit. Just talk about it a little bit more, because it's kind of the sort of thing that, on day one, month one, somebody had to be first, in day 100 of year 3, somebody has to be next, kind of thing. So, and I think the more that we talk about it, the more that we elevate it, in people's minds, and we drag it from the back of their minds to the front and so on. All right. Okay, fine. So very good. Thank you very much, panel. Let's go over to social, if we can, actually, and have a look and see who has joined us online today. Patricia, welcome back. From Mexico. Great to have you online actually today. And Querétaro, I'm guessing, is a terrible English pronunciation of the city from where you're from. So I do apologize, Patricia, but great to have you as part of the audience today. And Marta joins us from Poland as well. Marta, you're challenging me, all of you ladies, today with the cities from where we are. So I'm going to ask a colleague of mine to give me a phonic pronunciation of that so that I can have a go in a little while. All right, so I'll come back to you, Marta, if I may. Magongani, thank you so much for joining from Swaziland this afternoon as well. Great to have you online as well, my friend. I think we might take one more. If we've got one more, TD would be really good. Finori is joining from Middlesbrough. Now, if you're not from the UK, you may have chosen to pronounce that particular city name differently. So there you go. That's how local you need to be sometimes to get the pronunciation close to correct at any rate. All right. So thank you very much indeed, Fenori, from joining us up from the northeast of England. Excellent. Now, let's move on, I think, a little bit. I can see lots of chat going on in the social chat, but I don't see many questions kind of coming through just yet. So don't be shy, people. Put in your questions and we'll get them through to the panel directly. Charlotte, in the meantime, let's take our next question if we can.
Nick, sorry, put my teeth in. My next question, the new question, is from Matthew Clark. Matthew asks, what are the benefits of becoming a chartered project manager?
All right. So the chartered project professional benefits. Well, these kind of can be realised in many different ways, Matthew. Let's have a little think, panel, and see what our thoughts are. Tom, why don't you start us off on this one, and then we'll hear from Ricardo.
Okay, thanks. I think one of the big benefits of it is external recognition that has some sort of equivalence across other professional sectors. So if you say to people, I've got a project management qualification, then yeah, it's great. It's nice to have, but there's no sort of recognition of equivalence. So how good is that? How valid is that? Just because you got PMQ or Prince 2 or something like that. When you can say I'm chartered, then that immediately starts to give a lot more understanding of the degree of professionalism that you've achieved through the experience and knowledge and capability that you've developed. So I think that's one of the big benefits, is that external validation.
I certainly agree with that, and I think if your early career, it's pretty straightforward what you need to do to get going in your professional development. But when you're kind of mid-career, sometimes it starts to feel a little bit samey. You're an accomplished individual, you've got a strong CV, a strong track record of delivery. But where do you go from there? So it's an important goal to be able to set yourself. Ricardo, your thoughts on this, and then we'll hear from Sian.
We were talking about rugby earlier, and I'll use a rugby analogy here. If you've played rugby in the UK or Ireland, and you go to Portugal and you say you've played rugby on these two countries, no one will ask you questions. You will immediately be on the top 3, top 5 in the country there. So it's the same thing with the ChPP status. No one will ask you questions. It's a quality stamp since day one. If you want, as you said, if you're in the middle of your career, if you want a leap, not a regular progression, if you want a big leap forward, you need to have something that differentiates you from your competition. It's you've seen that, you've done that, and here is the quality stamp. So the same way, if you're, I'll use a railway field where I'm working on. If on a railway project, a civil engineer needs to be chartered to be able to take ownership and accountability for a section of design, why shouldn't a project manager need the ChPP status to manage that same project? So this again, I like to say this, there's no questions asked, and it puts you in the game for higher levels of responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. It's surety, really, isn't it? And when you've got big risks to manage, when you've got big budgets to keep track of, when you've got lives at stake, the high stakes challenges, then having that surety is super important. Thank you so much, Ricardo. Sian, your thoughts on the benefits of becoming chartered?
Yeah, I agree with all of you. I agree with Ricardo and Tom in everything that they've said. And I think the reason it does hold such a high status is that people aren't being tested in the same way as some of the other project management qualifications. You're having to evidence your competence in delivering complex projects. And it's a very challenging application to go through, and it will be scrutinized by people at the highest level in the profession. And I think it is that expression of competence and evidence of competence that has helped it to become a shortcut to something really of quality, both locally and globally. And certainly we've worked with large organizations who've had their own internal certification process that they have now linked to the Route 2 to Charter. So organizations are recognizing that they can't just mark their own homework when they certify people into senior project management roles. It's really helpful to have that link to something like Charter.
Yeah, I really agree with that. That personal and professional challenge is rigorous. And things that are worthwhile are rigorous. Things that are easy, it's like, okay, yeah, fine. That doesn't really differentiate you. Things which have a real challenge to them and have some rigor behind it, that is worthwhile. Really, really good. Thank you very much indeed. Really good point. And Etienne, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to echo some of what's already been said, especially what Sean has just said. It really is about status. Now, as head of education, a lot of what I do is help people get qualified. And doing a project management course, even at a practitioner level, shows a level of practical application, but nowhere near to the extent that the ChPP does. So you can get a practitioner qualification with very little practical experience. You can then submit that along with your CV to show, or you could just show you've got ChPP, and there's all the evidence you need to show that not only do you know what you're talking about with practical experience, you've demonstrated over years that you know what you're doing. And for me, that's the big difference.
And this is a fascinating thing for me, because when the charter status came up, there were multiple routes, that you could take to arrive at that charter status. And there was actually quite a large number of people who, in the initial tranche, who put themselves forward, who were basing their application on that very experience. So it was a really interesting thing to see. And I would have loved to have been an assessor, because I think there would have been some fantastic portfolios of work, put forward. Would have been, how fascinating would that have been for anybody to kind of sit in and listen to somebody's work, their professional work being shared in that fashion. I might come back to you, panel, particularly to those who are involved intimately in preparing people to go through the process in a few moments. If you're over in the audience, folks, I'm going to ask you some questions in a moment. After the next question, we'll come back to the audience to ask for you guys. Little earlier, I was really struggling with Marta's city pronunciation, so I'm going to have a go, and I'm going to say it's Bydgoszcz, something of those order. Anyway, Marta, that will give you a little smile, all right, this afternoon in Poland, as an Englishman makes a complete hash of the pronunciation of your city. It may be Bydgoszcz from the team are suggesting that in my ear as well. So, okay, let's move on, Charlotte. We'll take our next question for the panel if we can, and then we'll come back to the audience to ask them a question.
Thanks, Nick. The next question is from George D. Could I achieve the ChPP status just by studying on my own? Why should I enroll in a course, and what are the advantages of doing so?
Okay, Etienne, start us off, please, and then we'll hear from Tom.
Well, seeing as education is my area of speciality, I think this is the answer I would give to anyone asking, can they self-study or should they attend a training course? And it's always so much easier when you've got someone that you can speak to, when there's something that you don't quite get. The textbook explains it one way. The course, if it's a self-paced course, teaches you this concept, but it's explained one way. And sometimes if you don't get it, that way is not enough, and you need someone to try again, giving you different options, different ways of explaining it. So for me, it's always attending a course with an instructor who can explain things in a way that you understand always has advantages over self-study.
Yeah, I agree with that. I learn randomly, but also I think I learn most efficiently when it's structured. So from that point of view, I think as a learner, I would benefit, more from a kind of structured approach. Tom, your thoughts on this, and then we'll hear from Sian.
Okay, the short answer is actually yes, you could achieve ChPP status just on your own. But I think the important thing to recognize is that ChPP validates the experience and knowledge that you already have. So you can't study and learn to pass ChPP in the same way that you do a lot of other qualifications. So you do a 2-day, 5-day course, or have it spread over a period of time, and then you take an exam at the end and you pass. That's not what ChPP is about. ChPP is about saying, prove to us you actually have the capability already. Where a course can be really helpful, and this is the point that Etienne was making, is that it's useful to have an instructor who can guide you through the process of applying and being assessed. So there are multiple routes into ChPP, and several of them require you to submit written application elements and then go through a face-to-face virtual assessment. And many people have not been through that kind of experience, so don't understand, firstly, how to present the evidence in a written format in the way that APM want, and then also how to present the evidence in a spoken answer, again, in the way that APM wants. So that's the value of doing a course. So the course is there to prepare you for the assessment part of it, not to get you ready to be at the level required.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good point, and we'll maybe touch on some of the coaching aspects as well, and the mentoring, if you like, that might go alongside that in a moment. Sian, your thoughts about people going it alone, or working with somebody to partner with them on that journey.
I think it goes back to your chat about being one of the assessors, the fly on the wall, hearing about people's project experience. And certainly when we work with customers who are putting a group through to charter or some other of the other higher level professional certifications, which are competence and report based, it's really great for people to hear other people's expression of their experience in terms of competence. We're all very good at writing our CV, a chronological list of the things that we've done. It's actually quite hard to pull out a competence from your lengthy work experience, typically, and express it in a way to satisfy the assessors as part of the written assessment, as Tom has referred to. And then, of course, practicing for interview, that always helps to have an experienced facilitator there with you, putting those thorny, awkward questions to you is a useful preparation for your interview assessment.
Yeah, thank you so much, indeed. I think that preparation piece is key, isn't it? Great performances don't often happen randomly. You need to build up to it. You need to practice a little bit, and having somebody to work with you as you build your confidence and build that practice is super, super important. So thank you, Sian. Really good point. Ricardo, final thoughts on this?
Yeah, with everything that has been said, but I would like to add something. I got my ChPP status from Route 2, so I had a praxis professional qualification before. And the evolving from the practitioner to the professional qualification requires a completely new mindset. You need to forget what you've been learning to be performant in the corporate environment. You need to forget that. It's not about teamwork. It's not about what we've done. It's about what was the project, what were the objectives, what did I do specifically in that project, and how I contributed to achieving those objectives. So it requires completely formatting the mental drive and presenting, pitching about yourself to someone in direct speech. It's not easy at all. So I'm with what has been said. It is possible, but it's about being pragmatic and using a mentor because a provider of training needs to be above all a mentor. Being a mentor is vital, and a word of appreciation here to my mentor in the process, Rajiv Khanna. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a really good point, isn't it?
Sorry, guys.
I think it's really important. Yeah, no, it's really important to thank, though, the coaches, all right, and the mentors and the people who work with us in this way, because great athletes, they always have a coach, okay, and the important thing is, if you're going to achieve your personal best, it's the coach who kind of drives you on that little bit more. Well, come on, that's really good, but how can you do this? I just remember an athlete called Jonathan. I forget his surname now off the top of my head, but he achieved a world record in the triple jump one season, and he broke the world record twice. Now, once it was disallowed because the tailwind behind him was just a little bit too fast, but then he managed to do it on a calmer, still day, and he still leapt something like 6 or 7 inches further than any other human being had managed to do in that particular discipline. All to do with the relationship between the coach and the athlete. And as professionals, we need those coaches behind us. Do have a look, if you're online, at the Praxis Framework, which is one of the educational routes, if you like, through to chartered status. So do have a little look for that. The QR code is on the screen. And I did promise to ask our audience something. So here we go. I'm going to say to you all, to answer this question, if you can do on the social chat, is becoming a chartered project professional, is becoming chartered something that you are considering in your career? Now, it might not be something that you're thinking about doing straight away. It's a big thing to do, but is that something that appeals to you if you're working in the PPM space to try and achieve that chartered status? So we'll pop that question in the social chat for you, and you can have a few minutes to answer that. In the meantime, the panel are going to press on. Charlotte, we've had some live questions submitted.
We certainly have, Nick, and I do apologise for the pronunciation of this person's name. Question from Adi Faya. What is the relationship between APMG, ChPP and the PMI?
All right. Well, here's a lot of acronyms then to kind of unpack a little bit. I'll come in on this actually towards the end. Etienne, do you want to have a go first, and then we'll hear from Sean?
Yeah, unpacking all these acronyms. All right. So the ChPP, one of the routes to getting the chartered professional status is by one of the routes is to get a Praxis Framework professional qualification. And you can do a Praxis bridging course if you've got the PMI PFQ. So so you're kind of halfway there if you've got the PMI qualifications. So yeah, so it's one of the, it helps you on one of the routes into your chartered status.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just for those people who might not be in this industry, so the Project Management Institute, the PMI, are a US-based membership body who have a very large body of knowledge, and they've been helping to drive standards in the project management profession for many years and so on. So you may come across the acronym PMI fairly frequently when you're out there. ChPP is our chartered professional, chartered project professional, rather. I was searching for the 2 Ps at the end, chartered project professional. So that's that 4-letter acronym. And of course, APMG, well, that's kind of us, all right, who are the APM group. And I'll explain a bit more about us in a few minutes. Sian, you're going to jump in and help me out with the APM, APMG, ChPP, PMI, and so on.
I think this is a great question, and it almost goes right back to the first question about, is it worth becoming chartered, internationally, because it's a code for shorthand to being the top of the profession. Because project management is a bit of a nightmare in terms of professional bodies, obviously APMG accepted. So we have several professional bodies with multiple certifications, and so many customers say, which one should I do? And the answer is, at the moment, they're probably geographically the most popular. So PMI, as Nick said, in the US and some of other countries as well. And then APM in the UK and the International Project Management Association, maybe in Central Europe. But at the moment, PMI themselves haven't established a route to charter. But there are the route that Etienne described, where you can use your PMI, PMP, Project Management Practitioner, Professional, I've lost that P, and go in via the Praxis route. But at the moment, PMI as a professional body have not linked their certifications to charter. APM Group have seen great foresight by linking Praxis to the charter. But at the moment, there's nothing from PMI.
I understand that. And you worked spot on, actually. Project Management Professional is the 3-letter PMP acronym. That's kind of what that stands for now.
I should know.
There is that's quite all right. No, don't worry. There's a lot of acronyms, okay, to kind of get our heads around. One of the things that it's worthwhile, actually, and Etienne's busy studying for the PMP from PMI. Okay, so there you go. So good example there. So welcome to the show, Etienne. I think there's a couple of things to bear in mind. One is that APM Group really came out of the UK APM, and we're actually celebrating our 30th birthday as a company this year. We have our founder and CEO, Richard Farrow. He is a fellow of the UK Association of Project Management, and also, incidentally, an engineer in his background. So he's familiar with chartered status and all of that kind of thing. So it's a very important thing, I think, to be able to recognise when you are top of your game in any profession. And what's fantastic about the work of the membership bodies, wherever they are around the world, I would encourage you to engage with your local national association for project management. It's a fantastic way to share ideas and learn from others, just like Level Up, and really get your career moving and build those networks that are so important for you to develop your practice as a project manager, as well as the theory that you can be taught through the courses and so on. So very good. Thank you very much. And Adefeya, thank you so much for the question. It's a really good one. And I think it was worthwhile spending a few moments actually just kind of sharing what the answer was there. So thank you, panel. Let's move on, Charlotte, if we can, and we'll take our next question, please.
So this question has come from the person that you've just mentioned, Etienne, who's studying for ChPP. They ask, what is the minimum experience you recommend before attempting chartership?
Well, this is a really great question, and I'm not going to give you the consulting answer, Etienne, of it depends, although I might come back to that in a moment. Tom, what are your thoughts about where you should start thinking about this? Is this a kind of early career day one goal to set yourself, or is there a kind of a feeling that says I'm going to do this after a certain amount of time, or that kind of thing?
There isn't any kind of guideline on the amount of experience in terms of number of years of working in a project environment. And I think, just as a quick aside, one of the things for everyone to remember is that this isn't just a project qualification. The ChPP is for programs, portfolios, project office roles. So any kind of project professional, it's deliberately called project professional rather than project manager, chartered project manager. Whatever your experience is, it needs to be at the required level to be recognised for chartered status. And that means running project or program portfolios with complexity, as recognised by the 4 indicators of complexity from APM. In terms of experience, the youngest qualified chartered project professional is 26 years old. So he didn't obviously have a huge amount of experience in terms of the number of years under his belt. What he did have was experience and responsibility in a management role in a complex project environment that was sufficient to meet the criteria to become chartered. So I think if you're thinking about career, what you need to be thinking about is the levels you've got to get to rather than the amount of time I've got to spend. Now, you do need to get a good amount of experience to be able to perform at each level competently. Some people may take longer, they may take different routes. So you might start out in a project delivery role and then move to an office role or whatever. But whichever route you go, you need to get to that level of experience in terms of the complexity before you can apply for chartered status. It isn't just simply a recognition of 25 years of service, for example. That doesn't qualify. Some people just simply take their first year or two and repeat it 25 times and never actually advance. So what you need to do is...
Yeah, I mean, I was going to kind of say, sorry to interject, but I was kind of thinking along those lines because, especially with so many folks working in a contractor type relationship, it's quite often the case that your next project you'll be hired to do pretty much mirrors the last one that you've just done, because people tend to hire off experience based on your professional CV rather than sponsoring you, if you like, to grow and develop as a professional. So I'm really pleased to hear that, longevity does not equal progression in that sense, So that's really good. Thank you so much, Tom. Etienne, your thoughts, please, and then we'll hear from Sian.
Yeah, just a little bit about the praxis professional, which is one of the routes. To get the praxis framework professional, you need the practitioner qualification, but then you also need a minimum of 5 years. So that gives you some idea. So even though there's no strict kind of time frame, in years, the praxis framework professional, that looks for a minimum 5 years.
Okay, all right. So it's good to have a kind of a sense of, an order of magnitude, if that makes sense. Sian, and then we'll go to Ricardo.
So I think that I completely agree with both Tom and Etienne here. We also coach people to IPMA, International Project Management Association levels B and A. And both of those mandate the minimum number of years is 5. To be able to certify for that qualification. I think APM have been a lot more forward thinking, back to Nick's point, and not mandating how many years of career that you've had to have. However, if you haven't managed or led in situations of complexity to be able to evidence all of the competence elements that APM require you to show in the chartered application, then that won't help you. But there is a tool to check whether your project management experience is suitable for charter, and that's available from the APM website. So not about the number of years, but about really your level of experience.
It's such a good point, isn't it? And this is where it needs to be meaningful. There has to be meaning behind it. It is not just a badge to collect. It's much more than that. Ricardo, final thoughts on this?
Yeah, very briefly, exactly. To support what has been said, it's not about your age. It's about what you have been doing since you started the P3M career. 5 years, in my humble opinion, is not enough to have evidence to demonstrate that you're competent taking the praxis route. Obviously, in those 20 competencies out of the 39 that are needed, that you need to demonstrate that you're competent in. But again, there's no minimum age or minimum period recommended, or period recommended. There's a minimum, but not an exact number recommended. It's about how intensive and how broad your career has been until then to have accumulated experience and be able to produce that evidence.
Yeah, it's such a good point, isn't it? And Sian opened the show by talking about it's an indication of how the profession is maturing. And in a mature profession, you have to be able to recognize that people will have acquired evidence in different competencies. And so therefore it's correct that you have a broad range from which you need to demonstrate the evidence of a subset of them in order to be able to, achieve that status. So very good. Thank you very much, panel. And Nitin, thank you so much for raising it, my friend, because, often, you kind of see job postings all of the time, don't you? Must have X years of experience. And to Tom's point, if you did the same thing for 5 years, helpful though it might be, it doesn't give you that broad, base of evidence upon which to draw. All right, very good. Let's move on. Charlotte, if we can, I think we've got time to squeeze in 2 more questions if we're fairly quick, panel.
Thanks, Nick. We've got a question from George D, but it does relate to a live question that's just been asked in the chat. George asks, which of the 3 routes to ChPP is the fastest and easiest?
Now, look, every journey begins with a single step, and I could quote lots of philosophical things about trees falling in forests, and if you're not there to observe them and all of this kind of thing. Sian, what are your thoughts on this? The fastest and the easiest? What a great question.
Wow. So I'm not confident that any route could be called easy. However, there are some of the recognised assessments, so such as one of the companies that we work for, and there's several that you'll see on the APM site. So they will have their own internal assessment approach and certification approach. So the ones that I'm thinking of would typically be scoring projects from non-complex up to complex, and scoring project managers from the start of their career up to a senior point where they're managing complex projects. Now, luckily for their employees, they've aligned that certification process to charter. So it means you don't have to go through the same process twice. So that's probably the easiest and fastest if you work for one of those organizations. And then we've mentioned it several times before, Praxis, or if you're in Australia, AIPM has put in place a few routes as well that will work. So, it's not a sprint. I would say it's a little bit more of a marathon as a certification, but that's my thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. I do love it when, internally in organizations. So if you're working in aerospace, if you're working in financial services, if you're working in, as Ricardo does, in infrastructure, that these vertical industries usually have a way of doing things. They usually have a, formalized competency framework, some kind of professional development ladder, model, call it what you want. And so when that aligns and it has external scrutiny and external validation, it makes complete sense, doesn't it? Just saves everybody burning an awful lot of calories for very little reason. Tom, your thoughts on this one, please, about the 3 routes.
I think the first thing I would do is echo what Sian said and say there is no easy route. There is the simplest route in terms of route 2, because that requires the least amount of work to actually get the status. But to get to one of those equivalent assessments that allows you to go through route 2 is in itself going to be a lot of time and effort and hard work. In terms of the pure amount of effort required, route 2 is definitely the simplest. Route 1 and 3, the amount of work you do to get ready is the same. It's just the amount of time you spend in interview that is longer in route 3 than it is in route 1. But the short answer is there isn't a simple, easy route.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much indeed. And some great answers. And what a insightful question, George. Thank you. And I agree with you, Charlotte. It did really echo some other questions that were running in the chat in parallel. Ricardo, final thoughts on this before we move on?
Yeah, I would like to say that the Praxis route, although simple to understand, is not easy at all or light in terms of workload. I would say that the majority of the work is done to achieve the Praxis professional qualification. So that the workload would have been done before. The application, the report to achieve that qualification is far from straightforward or quick to complete. But it's a very powerful exercise, because it allows you to mentally organize everything that you've been doing for the past 10 to 15 years, depending on the time distance between the projects that you use to support that application. So yeah, those are my thoughts about that.
Yeah, thank you so much indeed. We're just scrambling a little bit, panel, because we've got a flurry of activity kind of going on all in parallel. Let's move, though, I think, to our final question. It's going to be our final question for the session. Charlotte, if you could take us through that, then that would be great. Thank you.
Nick, it may not be a quick answer, but our last question is from Chris in the UK. How do I know if my projects have the required degree of complexity for ChPP?
All right. Okay. Well, this is that kind of evidence, and, working with someone who knows is quite a useful thing in this case, isn't it, really? Tom, how did you figure out, what evidence was going to be weighty enough? And I don't mean how much your laser printer had. Okay. What I mean is how much merit the evidence that you had. How did you go about judging that as part of your application?
Well, APM actually make it pretty straightforward to do that, because they provide 4 indicators of complexity that they expect you to be able to demonstrate in each single example of a project, program, or portfolio. And they're around the objectives, the amount of work, the risk, and the stakeholders. So if you use those 4 indicators and you can assess your project against them, then you will know if your project meets those requirements. So Sian was talking earlier about checking your awareness for yourself in terms of whether you can go forward for it. You can also use those 4 indicators as a way of checking whether your projects are complex enough. Now, there is still a degree of subjectivity, because what I consider to be stakeholder complexity may not be the same as what you consider, but at least we have got a common starting point with those 4 indicators, which are on the APM website and in the guidance document that APM produce.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much indeed. We might link to that in a few moments. It's really good to know, isn't it, that framework is there so that you can figure it out. Excellent. Sian, your thoughts on this?
So I think that you've stolen my thunder there, Tom. So there are 4 indicators on the website that point to high levels of risk, multiple interdependent stakeholders, uncertainty, etc., etc. Because if you ask anybody what the definition of a complex project, program, or portfolio is, they'll all come up with slightly different mechanisms. But there is a lot of guidance. I think Tom also referred to the many-paged guidance from APM that's available on the website, and there is a spreadsheet as well that you can use. So if you're going to embark on this journey, really have a look at that guidance first. I'm sure you're a bit like me when you get the box from IKEA that you've got to put together the chest of drawers, you just barge straight in and start making it without reading the full instructions. In this case, that's a very bad approach. Read the instructions before you spend all your valuable time on the ChPP application.
It's so true, isn't it? It's so true. It's so easy to build those things left to right instead of right to left, or even
upside down.
or a wardrobe where you think, okay, it's not actually going to stand up because the ceiling's too low. Ricardo, rescue me from my DIY misery. How do you figure out, if you have that right sort of level of evidence?
The aspects related to the project have been stated already by my 2 colleagues. There's one aspect missing. You may have participated in a very complex project that has ticked all the boxes, but you may not have had the participation in that project or the relevance, the management aspect of that project necessary to produce the evidence that you need to produce. So you have to have a combination of both. It's how complex, how critical was the project, and how relevant was your role in that project, allowing you to produce the evidence you need.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much indeed. Ricardo, well, brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Time has beaten us yet again on Level Up today, but it's been absolutely fabulous. So I think what we're going to do, we'll go round the panel in guest order for your closing remarks. So Ricardo, why don't you start us off on your thoughts on today's show, and then we'll hear from Sian.
Great show, great panel. Thank you for inviting me. Final notes are, please consider seriously taking the steps needed to achieve the ChPP status. It will be a fantastic milestone in your career. If you're ready to move to another level of P3M in your career, please do so, because you will shine from the crowd by having a status that the vast majority of the other P3 managers do not have.
Excellent point. It really does help you to be distinctive in the profession and to also start to transition towards that leadership role, which is so important. Be the role model, for other people to aspire to. So thank you, Ricardo, and thank you for giving us your time so generously today. Sian, your closing remarks on today, and then we'll hear from Tom.
Well, thank you so much also for inviting me for my first panel on levelling up. I've really enjoyed it, and the questions from the audience have been fabulous, and lovely to meet all the fellow panelists. And I also would think very carefully about not just stopping at a project management or program management or portfolio management qualification, thinking about going that extra step, as Ricardo said, to help you stand out as one of the true thought leaders in the profession. And then also maybe think, if you're a member of APM and you've reached a certain level of seniority, thinking about becoming a fellow, because once you're at the chartered level, then you are at the top of the profession, and it's great to share with those in the wider profession, not just in your own organisations.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It is such a call to action there, isn't there, to make sure that we are giving back, to that community of practice, if I might, kind of call it that, not just locally either, but internationally as well. Tom, your thoughts on today, and then we'll hear from Etienne.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been an enjoyable experience, and thank you for being gentle with me on the first time I've done this. So it's been a great experience. Thank you very much for that. I think I would just, in summing up, I think everyone should have got the understanding now that getting ChPP is not easy. But I think those two questionnaires that APM provide, which we'll be providing the link to the websites shortly, those are great tools to use to determine whether you are ready now or where to plan your journey. So in terms of continuing professional development, if you find that you're not ready, that you're not don't have the experience, your projects aren't complex, you can then think about what you have to do to plan for the future to get ready to achieve the chartered status. It's not easy, but I think we were saying earlier, anything that's easy isn't worth having. So it's definitely something that would be worth aiming for.
Absolutely right. Thank you so much indeed, Tom, and thank you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Etienne, your thoughts, please?
Yeah, I don't really think I've got much more to add other than the fact that having this status allows you to very easily show others that you have the skills, you have the experience, and it's not just a project management qualification. So many people running around who are project managers, who have some project management experience, but this just sets you at that higher level, and it really is worth getting. Worth the work.
Excellent. Thank you so much indeed. It is worth the work, and I would say reach out to any of the panel that you would like to. All of our LinkedIn profiles are available to you on the event page on apmginternational.com. So do jump over there. Just look for Level Up on the website in the search function, and you'll find today's event. In fact, actually, you can just click on events, actually, and it will appear under today for you. So super easy to find. Click on the little link, and then we would all welcome professional connections from you. And as I always say, please don't sell us anything, but do connect with us professionally. That's kind of what we're here for. All right, very good. Charlotte, what an interesting episode it's been today. A bit of a deeper dive into that mid-career area to level up your career. So beyond the initial training, where do you really go next? Your thoughts on today?
For the next show, can we have less acronyms? That'd be great for me. But But now, on a serious note, thank you so much to our panelists. They've been absolutely fantastic. We couldn't run these shows, these free to attend events, without the expert knowledge of our panelists, nor can we put them on without the contributions of our viewers, asking the questions that the panel in turn get to answer. Fantastic show. Thank you so much to everybody.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, thank you. And thank you to Adriana, who's over online, enjoying the chat that's been going on as well. I've just been reading some of it as it's scrolling up kind of past my window as well. Excellent. Look, very good. Well done, everybody. Thank you to the producers online for your excellent questions today. Great job. And do watch out for your name in the credits if your question was selected, panel. On behalf of everybody, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Level Up today. Now, over on our website, you may, of course, search for the answers to more than 1,900 questions. We're almost at 2,000 now. A comprehensive, free of charge resource connecting you with more than 200 experts from all around the world. So do jump over there and have a little look at that. Don't forget, you can also listen to the audio versions of all the shows on your preferred podcast platform as you are out and about. Now, coming up next on Level Up on Monday, 8 a.m. UK time, we're going to look at an incredible skill, how to facilitate like a pro. It's the kind of skill that really will help you personally level up your career and stand out from your peers. Friday the 18th at this time, well, it's a very special day indeed, as Ellie is going to be hosting that show. She's going to be leading it as it's our second anniversary episode, and we're going to be looking at the same time as marking that milestone as how to secure your next role, whether it's an internal appointment or externally, getting actually hired into that new job and building your career is really what we're here to help you do on Level Up and, of course, at APMG International. On that note, do jump over, please, to our YouTube channel. Subscribe. Hit the like button for today's video. It really does help other people discover the content. Doesn't cost you anything to do. And of course, you can click on the notifications bell and that will remind you when we're going live and all of the other great content that we post over there for your benefit. Just ask us and we'll send you a personal summary of what's coming up and how you too can join us here on the panel and level up your career with APMG. Thanks very much, everybody. We'll see you next time.